school of worship even since Talmudic times. While they were in the temple, especially since the Hasidic movement, there has been a battle between the wordless melody, which the Hasidim championed as more holy, and the melody with words, which was traditionally seen as the prayer at its core. But since this movement evolved, how has instrumental music played, as if any, a role as a prayer throughout time?
We decided to do this project because of the genesis of this project actually was from a lecture by Zev Feldman in which he mentioned the existence in Eastern Europe of Klezmer Shuls, and that gave me an image, but I didn't want to go to the point of actually creating music that we imagined could have been in the Klezmer Shuls. Rather, we wanted to give ourselves license to creating an atmosphere that we thought was in the spirit of Klezmer Shuls, in which there would be people from a lot of cultures. A band would have local musicians that were not only Jewish, it could be Gypsies and Italians, Poles, depending on where they were, and there could be Hasidic musicians coming through town. So the point for us was musicians having a good time and coming from a vocabulary of synagogue music and local folk music. So we never were on the wavelength of trying to actually create an actual service. It was rather an evocation of the feelings that these people would have experienced in services, but expressed in the joy of making music together.
To put your thing further into context, you know, the sort of fight between instrumental music and vocal music has gone on through the ages, not only in Jewish culture. We may remember the Council of Trent in Europe, where
I missed it. Where
they were also had to have heated discussions about whether harmony was to be used in the vocal music as well as instrumental to be used at all in the church. And then in the 19th century, when the organs became popular in the Haskalah, there would be these heated discussions as to whether you could have an organ used in synagogue services because it evoked so much Christian music, and yet you find those organs in synagogues in Europe because obviously they won out in some places. So the idea of the instruments being sort of a lower carnal kind of an entity in religious music has been very common. You find it in many other cultures, and also the forbidding of the instruments in the synagogue. After 70 AD. It was, our response to that was also, even like in Bnei Brak in Israel, you can't have instruments, used so that in the weddings, unless you're not outside of the realm, in the catering halls.
The other thing was, though, that because we are primarily addicted to playing music, and some of our deepest, what we would call our most religious moments, have been when we're producing sound. There are certain, it's even been studied by people who study effects of certain musical intervals on the brain. There are certain intervals that will bring people to tears. The interval of a sixth, my bunny lies over, that's a sixth, will somehow make people less violent. There are so many studies about how music really affects the brain. I mean, I know for myself that I have been brought to tears, not even understanding why, listening to maybe a Mahler symphony or a Mahler song or a Schubert song, or playing something that's so beautiful and so simple that to me that's almost a religious experience. Okay, we'll take that kind of expression with instruments, and put that in the hat, so to speak, mixed up with our musical education, with our exposure to Jewish culture and life and Yiddish language and Eastern European music and classical music and Johnny Cash, and everything we've been barraged, that's been a barrage to us as musicians because we listen very carefully, we listen very openly, and to take music that comes from a religious use and pair it with things that maybe don't come from a religious use, like a boot-stomping Polish mountain dance, which maybe we might have put into this, I don't know, we did. But, and to us, it is such a gratifying feeling to do. It's where we would rather be than going to shul, I hate to say it. So we felt like the other thing about music is there are no words. There's no words to say, I hated the rabbi's sermon because I don't believe what he says about the death penalty. There's nothing divisive about music. And the other thing was to take very common, not Orthodox, but conservative and American Reform tunes and make them unrecognizable so that you can't say, well, yeah, we don't sing it that way. You know there's something familiar about something that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, so that's what we did with that. There's something recognizable about it, but we, kicked it a little bit, plugged it into the wall a tiny bit, and lots of the melodies in this tune are taken from straight cantorial usage. But we just...
had the Shema in there as well.
The Shema, the whole accordion solo on the Shema. But if we didn't tell you, you might not recognize it. But
we played it for a committee. Stu got us a grant to do this, and the creator of this project, really, the idea of which was to get away from words, basically. But when we played it for the committee, we had to do this to get our money. So we, dressed well. And when we played it, they didn't recognize the Shema. You would think, the Shema is this focal center of the service, and we blared it out there. But, because it was sandwiched in the movement, and people may not recognize all of what's going on, and that suits us fine, because so much of music is subliminal, and you don't want to knock people over the head and have them recognize everything. You want to work on a subliminal level, and for a lot of the times it's more effective that way. Their defenses are not up. But so much of the weaving of the music in and out of the music, like you said, you may not even notice that the morning prayers go through this entire work in different guises.
And the effect of that you were singing of the accelerated chanting was also trying to be a kind of nervous sound that was just our kind of tip of the hat to crowd noise, to just people settling in, coming in and being a little, what's going on in the background noise. That was also consciously a compositional